Hi, I'm Doug from Dynamic Computing, and welcome to episode 62 of 10-Minute Amiga Retrocast. Now, this week I'm going to be reviewing the new, in quotes, ImageFX 4.5 that's just been re-released from our friends at Aeon and Amiga Kit. Now, I use new in air quotes because 4.5 has been technically out for many years, but it just has been available for sale again until now. Now, Aeon bought the rights to ImageFX 4.5 from Woodall Design LLC in January of 2015. It used to be, back in the 90s and early 2000s, owned by Nova Designs. They're the ones who created it. They did a fantastic job on it. And it became a highly respected image processing program, competing with the likes of Art Department Professional from ASDIG, which you know I love, and Photogenics. The new ImageFX is available either as a digital download from the website, you'll see listed below there, from Aeon, or as a physical CD copy directly from Amiga Kit. Both of them are like 35 bucks American, 30 pounds in British money. You can't beat that price with a stick. It's worth much more than that, actually. The download is a little over 300 megabytes in size, so you're going to need a way to get that into your Amiga, whether it's PCMCIA, hooking it up over your network, burning it to a CD, putting it on a CF card, whatever you need to do to get it over to your Amiga. It is about 300 megabytes. Download the LHA file and decompress it, and I'll show you how to install it in just a moment. So ImageFX 4.5 will run on your OCS ECS Amiga just fine. But I really do recommend Retargetable Graphics or AGA minimum. You can get away with it on ECS, but you really want to experience it, go with higher color machine. It'll work on a 68,000 chip with just 2 megabytes of RAM, but don't expect miracles at that power level. You're going to have a hard time opening up much more than standard IFF type images. You're not going to really do much with JPEG images with that little RAM. Amiga OS 2.1 is the minimum, and you have to have a hard drive. This thing's 300 megabytes for the full installation. So you're going to need some kind of hard drive. Don't expect to run this from floppy. Now, I even got this running on my Amiga 1000 that you guys all know and I love, with 8 megabytes of RAM and my 020 chip in there. The 512 kilobyte chip RAM is a limitation, mainly in opening up the preview screen on its own custom screen. You go 640 by 400 in 16 colors for the main interface screen. It doesn't leave you enough chip RAM to do much of anything. But I find if I open it up on my Amiga 1000 in workbench mode, it works fine. I have plenty of memory to manipulate some of the smaller JPEG images. Just don't expect the live preview to look very good, because it won't in 4 colors, workbench colors. Now, an ideal machine would be an AGA machine with an 030 processor and at least 16 megabytes of RAM. Of course, it'll run on something smaller and it'll work just fine. But we're dealing with images here from our digital cameras that are 10, 12, 15, 18 megapixels at the low end, and you need more RAM to handle that. Now, it'll handle smaller images just fine with less memory. It works absolutely flawlessly on RTG or retargetable graphics systems, with a couple of caveats that I'll explain. Now, I really wish that this supported the Picasso 96 standard, which for some reason it does not. It hits the video cards directly instead of going through the Picasso 96, more of a generic type interface like much other software does. I really recommend that they correct that and put some kind of Picasso 96 interface on there. Now, I'm running this today on my Amiga 4000, which has a 68060 running at 80 megahertz, 140 megabytes of RAM, fast SCSI hard drives in here, and a Retina Z3 retargetable graphics card. So it's a pretty heavy hitter. But as you know, I do a lot with graphics editing, so I need something of this power level to really make me happy. Now, I have run this just fine on my Amiga 1200, which is an A40 with 64 megs of RAM, and AGA runs beautifully there. AGA preview screen. Now I did have one little funny thing happen on my Amiga 2000. It has a Picasso 2 retargetable graphics card in there, and it will absolutely only open on a 256 color Picasso 2 screen. Now it will render to any amount of colors I tell it to. So once I manipulate an image and I say, okay, show me a 16 million color 800 by 600 image, no problem, works just fine. It's just the preview and the interface screen that are limited to only 256 colors on that card. Anytime I try to go higher color for the interface screen, it locks up the Amiga Gurus. Now on my Amiga 4000, I can have 800 by 600 and 24-bit color screen for my interface screen. Flawless, doesn't give me any real problems. Let's jump right into the software installer. So let's get the software installed now. Now you'll notice it uses the standard Amiga installer, which is just awesome. Now here's where we run into our first quirk, one which I've been working with Matthew at AmigaKit to get resolved, and we at least know the cause. Now this install glitch only occurs if you're running Amiga OS 3.9 or Amiga OS 3.14 installed over Amiga OS 3.9. And it relates to apparently one single file called bevel.images. So here it is here, classes. It's this file, bevel.image, right here. OS 3.9 uses a higher version of the file than the one that the ImageFX installer tries to install. And the script is set up in a way where if it's a newer file, it's supposed to not overwrite it, but for some reason, even though the code's in there, boom, overwrites it anyways. So only if you have Amiga OS 3.9 or a 3.14 installation installed over 3.9, I recommend installing it in expert user mode. And then when you install it, when it gets to the point where it says bevel.image is not loaded on your machine, that's an error because it actually is there. Just choose skip the file and it will not overwrite bevel.image and you'll go along just fine. If you accidentally do overwrite it, you will have the symptom. You'll boot up and it'll tell you resource library is not working. It's all due to bevel.image. You just need to restore the original version of that file from a backup or from your original CD and everything will work just fine. Now, just so you know, Amiga OS 2.1 through 3.1.4 regular installs do not have this problem, so it will not affect most people. So here are the install options that we have. Install ImageFX 4.5, install ImageFX Extras, install remove hooks and modules, install anim brushes. This, of course, you have to install, so go ahead and do that install. Then it'll come back. The extras are some extra tools and utilities and renderers that you can install optionally. This appears to be installed by default when you install ImageFX 4.5. I've installed it separately and it looks like it's just reinstalling a few of the same things over itself. Anim brushes, something I haven't played with in there. There's 100 megabytes worth of anim brushes that you can play around with. Once we do this, we can tell it where to install it. All my files go under Applications, Graphics, and we tell it to proceed. It'll tell us that it's going to be installed in a new drawer called this file name here. Now our next point, it's going to ask us to install which versions of the modules. By default, it installs everything from the 68000 through the 60060 versions. If you want to save a little space, you can isolate it and tell it just the 060, just the 020, that kind of thing. I just do install for all versions. Now here, these are the display drivers. This is what you're going to be able to render your images to. By default, it will absolutely render directly to your Amiga and your Amiga display modes. You can also tell it to render to a DC TV, an EGS system, Firecracker, Ham-E, IV24, Opal Vision, Picasso, Retina, Sage, CyberGraphics, or Video Toaster Flyer. Now, if you're using like a Retina card like me or a Picasso 2 card and you don't see your exact thing on here, in this case I do, Picasso and Retina, I also installed the CyberGraphics card because this is the module I had to use on my Amiga 2000 to get it to render properly. This is why I say there needs to be a Picasso 96 compatible display driver right here so it can render to a generic Picasso 96 display driver. And I hope they do fix that. Let's just add a few of these modules here. Now it's going to ask us about scanning. Many of these scanners to get images into it are going to be parallel port scanners. They're kind of hard to find, but if you have an Epson or a HP parallel port scanner, you can scan to those. If you have a V-Lab Motion like I have, or a Digiview, you can scan into those. I'm just installing all the scanner drivers just for laughs. And it goes ahead and does the install. When the install is complete, go ahead and do a reboot so it sets up your assigns correctly. But in the end, you're going to have a new folder called ImageFX with your tools in it. The main program we're going to launch here is ImageFX. Now, on occasion, I have had this not ask me which video mode to open it up in. It instead just defaults and opens up into a standard high-res 640 by 400 screen. So let me show you first off how to change which screen mode that you're going to be opening up when you open up the software. What you'll do is you'll go here to prefs, click on prefs, click on preview options, click this button where it says open screen name, and then select custom screen mode and depth. Now it gives you all of your screen modes that you can use. Because I have a retargetable graphics system in here, it's showing me the retargetable modes. If you have AGA or ECS, it's going to show you those modes. In my case, I like to work in 800 by 600 24-bit. Works beautifully. Once you OK out of there, some other important things under preferences are default paths, where you can set up default areas that maybe you want to load or save pictures in. Just go ahead and choose where you want to load images, where you want to save images, where you want to render them, and set up all your defaults right here. Under virtual memory, this is cool because it will actually use your hard drive as virtual memory if you run out of RAM. Give it a path where you want it to store the virtual memory file. I just chose my work drive. Maximum RAM to use, I've got it at 60 megs on here. And then never use virtual memory, ask before using, use it when needed, always use for undo. I choose use it when needed. If I run out of real memory, then it'll use it. Here, undo levels, this is an important one. By default, you've got 1 level of undo. I like changing mine to 3 levels of undo. Now this is going to use up more RAM when you increase your undo levels, so don't go crazy on that. 3 is usually plenty. Now we click on save, and it should come up and ask us to save our preferences, default.prefs. Now, if you ever screw things up and you make your ImageFX unusable because you've chosen the wrong preferences, just go into your ImageFX folder and delete your default.prefs file, and it'll launch with a standard screen and you can just start from the beginning. We'll go ahead and save that. Now on to business. Let's go ahead and bring an image up to edit. Now it'll handle Amiga IFF images in a heartbeat. It doesn't even care about those, just does those in a heartbeat. But what we want to do is play around with some JPEG images. So let's find a nice JPEG image to open up. This happens to be one that my wife took. Little purple, here it is. Now, this is going to open up the JPEG file, and you're going to see down here it fills in this little gauge. This little gauge, you'll notice, is used all the time whenever you apply an effect or change something or save something. It always opens it up with that little gauge there, so you can see where you're at. Now you can see on my retargetable graphics system in 24-bit color, it renders out the preview just beautifully. Tells you how big the file is here, 2048 by 1783 pixels. So that's a, maybe an 8 megapixel file, something like that. You can resize your preview screen. You can reduce or enlarge the zoom ratio of it, and you'll see why that's important in a couple of minutes. But you can see it already renders beautifully just in the preview screen. If this were previewing an AGA, you would be able to see the dithering on it, absolutely, but it still looks really good. Now let's do something productive. We're not going to want to use a 2048 by 1783 image on an Amiga. It's just too big. So what you want to do, let's close some of these toolbars here so you can see how to get to them. Under Toolbox, click Size. Now we can scale our images. We can do just half it, double it, crop it, which I'll show you in a bit. In this case, we're going to scale the image. And we want to scale it to something useful on our AGA Amiga. Now we can just here cut it down if you wanted to do that, but there's no real point in that because we can just type our sizes right in here. I'm going to create a 732 by 480 image, and you'll see it cuts the vertical down by, or the horizontal down by to 35% and the vertical down to 26%. I could choose lock to image aspects ratio and it will keep the aspect ratio correct, but then it will not put it in one of our standard Amiga modes. Now this brings me to a very, very important topic. Since the beginning of recorded history, well, almost, the Amiga has been able to use overscan modes, where it actually takes the standard size image and adds some pixels on the left and the right, up and down, to fit on NTSC or PAL screens. It's just a standard thing that we use. For whatever reason, ImageFX never even mentions overscan mode anywhere. I can't even find it in the index where it talks about it. If you open up a file in overscan mode, it will open it up in overscan mode. But if you want to manipulate an image in overscan mode, you have to type in the sizes yourself right here. So we're going to go ahead and click OK, and it's going to scale the image down. All right, now you notice the image is smaller, of course, because we reduced the size. We can click the little plus, it brings it up to a better size, and you see it still looks really nice. Okay, now let's render this to an Amiga image. Okay. This is where you're going to see what I'm talking about with overscan. We're going to go down here to render. We're going to choose which device we're going to render to. Now notice Amiga was already chosen, but I could render it to any of these devices. The ones you're going to use on the Amiga usually are either Amiga or foreign, which I may cover in a minute, or in my case, I might render it to the Retina. On my Picasso, I'd render it to CyberGraphics. We're going to choose Amiga. But look here, display modes and colors. All right, it displays all the display modes that are available to me. But look at this, not a single overscan mode in sight. There's no 732 by 480 listed here. It's just 640 by 400 in ham mode. So does that mean it won't do it in interlace? No, it just means you have to choose the closest screen size to the mode that you're talking about, kind of the standard screen size. It's a weird way to do it, and they just need to have a big button that says overscan or list the overscan modes here, like every other program on the planet. When we click OK, next thing, we want to look at the colors. We know it's going to be a ham image because it says it right here, but here, it's not saying whether it's ham 6 or ham 8 or ham sandwich or whatever. Here, you choose either 16 base colors. Now it will be a ham 6 mode, or you choose 64 colors and it will be a ham 8 mode. So 16 colors is ham 6, 64 base colors is ham 8. These other modes, I honestly don't know what they do. I mean, it renders an image, but I don't know what the difference is. Now, this just needs a button that says ham 6 or ham 8, okay? It just does, because everybody else on the planet does. Dither options, we can choose our Floyd-Steinberg dithering, whether low, medium, or high dithering. We're going to go medium. Now, when we render the image, it's going to render it to my beautiful 1084 monitor, and I'm going to switch displays so you can see it. So here's our lovely 1084S display. As soon as I hit render, it's going to go ahead and render out the image, and it comes up as a lovely ham 8 732 by 480 pixel image. Not too shabby. Press the button, goes back to its normal mode. Now that we've rendered this as a 732 by 480 ham 8 image, we can save that as a ham image. What you do here is you click Save. You choose what kind of file that you want to save in, and you'll notice you have a lot of choices: NMs, bitmaps, CompuServe GIFs, PCX, PNGs, JPEGs. We're going to choose ILBM because that's what a ham mode is. We're going to tell it to do the rendered image. If we choose the main buffer image, it's going to save a 732 by 480 24-bit picture, okay? But we've already rendered it to a ham 8 image. So we're going to click Save As. We're going to give it a name. We're going to call this Little Purple One as a ham image. Now we would be able to open this up in any paint program that handles ham 8 images, and it'll come out just beautifully. So now we know how we can bring in a JPEG image or an IFF image or almost any other kind and manipulate it in ImageFX pretty easily. But what if we want to get some original artwork into here and we don't have a JPEG image? ImageFX has these cool modules called scanner modules. Like I mentioned before, you can use a parallel port scanner. They support a couple of the different generic styles like the HPs and the Epsons. Or you can scan it in with something like your Digiview or something like a V-Lab card, which I reviewed in an episode a couple of months back. It's a video capture card. So what can we capture? Well, how about this? A lovely picture done by none other than our wonderful Vicky Pixel Vixen. You can order these pictures. I mean, look at the quality of this. Look at this. That's beautiful. You can order these from her Redbubble site, which I'll link to below and also link in the description. You can get your own custom artwork from Vicky, work that she's done, and you can have it professionally printed on just about any size that you want to. And Vicky, don't forget, send me my 20% commission for everybody who orders one from watching my show. Now here we have our super duper high-tech video capture lab. So I lean Vicky's picture on the keyboard of my Commodore 128D, and I take my Sony Handycam, which does a nice 4:3 image. I have it connected up via S-Video directly to my Amiga's V-Lab card. Okay, so now I've got that. I wish I had better lighting, but this is what I have to work with right now. And now looking on the Amiga screen, we go to our scanner module. We choose which scanner module we want. We've got Digiview, Epson, etc. We're going to choose the V-Lab. We're going to choose input 3, which is the S-Video. We can change some of the features here that I've covered in my old V-Lab video. And when we choose capture, for some reason the very first capture always comes through corrupted. But our next one should work fine. Yep, that comes out corrupted. Let's do another one. It's always the first capture when I do it on ImageFX. It comes through a little crooked. Let's rearrange that. and capture her again. Look at that. We've got a nice little picture in there. Look at that. We have some of the keyboard in there too. This is, I mean, this is high quality professional stuff we're talking about here. Now this would work exactly the same if we were going to scan it through Digiview. We would choose V-Lab, we'd choose Digiview as our input. Gives you choices as to what screen to capture it. Now see, this isn't fair. These captures are actually coming in the darn overscan modes, and the program itself doesn't even support it directly. It's weird. We can choose 8-bit grayscale or 24-bit color, and of course if we choose 24-bit color we have to tell it to scan the red, then the green, then the blue, and it takes 4 or 5 minutes to get a full scan in full color, where on my V-Lab it took like 2 seconds to get an image in. But if a Digiview is all you have, it works absolutely perfect. Now let's have some fun editing the image here. Here we can brighten it up, and I find almost every time that I bring something into the Amiga, no matter what, I have to brighten it up a little bit. And here's how you do it. Under Toolbox, we'll go to Balance. We can control the gamma right here. We're going to pull the gamma down a little bit. We're going to bring the contrast up a fair amount, let's say 27. And we're going to bump the brightness up about 6. Okay, now you'll notice it's got this preview window here. I can adjust the actual size and positioning. So if I'm looking just to see the effect on just the kitty or just the girl, I can do that. As soon as I click preview, you can see it changes it. Now if I go hog wild here and hit preview again, you'll notice it continues to change it and update it whenever I hit preview. Let's turn the brightness up a little bit more. And I think those skin tones are coming through a little bit better now. Let's bring that up to 20. Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. We could get a little bit more red out of the hair though. Now, when I click OK there, it goes ahead and it updates the preview picture with the new brightness and balancing settings that I did. Now, here's a cool thing. If I don't like how it happened, how it affected the image, I can just hit this undo button and it'll turn it back to its normal display. In this case, I have 3 levels of undo because that's what I set it for. So let's go ahead and do this again. We'll go about 30. We'll take a little gamma out. We'll up the brightness there. Yeah, I think that looks better. Now, let's make some more changes to this image before we do anything else to it. I'd say this thing needs a little bit of J.J. Abrams, don't you? So let's put on some lens flares. Lens flare is under Effect, and we're going to go to Lens Flare. We're going to change the position of the flare by clicking on the image, and I think we need a big Star Trek style lens flare right here. And we're going to increase the radius of it, and we're going to preview that. Look at that. There, J.J. Abrams would be proud. Let's go ahead and put that in. You see it takes a little minute for it to go through. There we go. A nice J.J. Abrams lens flare on her image. Now let's play around. You know what? That's pretty ugly. Let's undo it. Let's play around with a little bit of embossing too, because that's always fun. For embossing, we go to our Convolve menu. We'll move this out of the way. We'll take some of these off here for a minute, and we'll go to Relief Map. We can choose which direction our light source is coming from. We'll go upper left, and a few seconds later, we have a nice embossed image of her painting. Now how about this here, where we have these extra keys showing up? Let's crop those out. We can go back into the Size toolbar, we can go to Crop, and we can either manually enter the crops, or we can go down here, grab our little marquees, and just crop that off. Boom, those are gone. Let's say we want to get rid of the kitty. We don't like kitty cats anymore. Crop. Now we just have the girl. Pretty cool, huh? And fast. Now let's load up one more picture, play with it a little bit. Now, I really like this picture because not only is the flower adorable there, but it picks up such great detail from these little rocks. And these are little rocks. I mean, this one is probably the size of your pinky nail. But she was able to get right in there and pick up all these gorgeous details in all these rocks here. So I kind of like this one. But let's bring this down to a more reasonable Amiga-like size again. We're going to go 732 by 480. Bring that down in size. There we go. Zoom in a little bit so we can see it. All right, now let's do some fun transforms on it here. Let's go to our effect menu, and we're going to let's go to our distort menu, and we're going to do polar mosaic. We're going to bring our outer ring in here. Do a preview. There we go. I think that's a pretty cool effect right there. That's actually a lot of fun. Now let's see how this does in taking one of these photos and converting it to a 16 color high-res image. That should push this pretty far. We're going to go back over here to render. And this time we're going to tell it 640 by 400, which is high-res laced. And we're going to tell it to do it in 16 colors. Now, we're going to definitely want to dither this little guy, and let's take a look on the 1084 screen and see what it looks like. Render away. Not bad, really. Not bad at all. We lose some of the detail in the flower, but look, we're keeping almost all the detail in all those really, really cool rocks. And you know what I think I'll do? I think I'll put an actual JPEG conversion of this 16 color image up on the screen so you can see it just like I'm seeing it too. What's my opinion of ImageFX 4.5? Is it going to unseat my art department professional that you guys know that I absolutely love? Well, maybe. On my retargetable graphics systems and AGA systems, I really like the ability to have a full color preview right on screen all the time. That really adds a lot to it. And that's something that art department doesn't seem to do. Now for my OCS and ECS machines, I'll probably stick with art department when I need to do a quick conversion because I don't really want to see an ugly 4-color rendition of a 24-bit JPEG file come up on my Workbench screen. For 30 bucks, this is a must-buy piece of software. Now, how about negatives? Because everything's got to have its flaws. And yeah, the installer issue, we're resolving that, we're working on it, but it's only going to affect people with Amiga OS 3.9 and only if they don't bypass installing that file. The other things I mentioned, it really needs Picasso 96 integration. These display programs that are used, like displaying on the Retina, displaying on Amiga, they're 20, 30 kilobyte files. So there's not that much to them. And I know that if they've got the source code, they're going to be able to take that apart, find a way to make a generic Picasso 96 display generator, and it'll work just fine. Then it just hits the Picasso 96 before it shoves it out to your hardware. Now, I'd also love to see a little more clarity with things like the overscan settings and whether you're generating it in ham 6 or ham 8, because if I hadn't sat down and played with this thing, it's confusing. You're looking at it going, wait, no, I want overscan. Why will this only do 320 by 200 when I'm one at 368 by 240 for my video work? It's easy to overcome using the steps that I showed you on here, but it just needs to be more clear. Just put an overscan button in there. I have had some issues with the displays. Like I mentioned on my Amiga 2000, it'll only work on my Picasso 2 card in 256 colors for the preview. Big whoop. I've also had some times where I try out a display mode and it'll bring up the ImageFX screen and no toolbars at all, so you can't even exit out of it. You're just stuck there. You have to reboot. But I can't always duplicate that. It's just every once in a while it seems to go wonky and not put the toolbars up there. But Matthew from Amiga Kit has been very responsive about problems and things that he can fix, and is working hard to fix them. So thumbs up to Amiga Kit for taking this bull by the horns. And I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you to my wonderful patrons who've been supporting me for the past couple of months. It really, really helps. It helps the channel grow. My next investment with the funds my patrons offer to me is going to be some new lighting, because I want to be able to scan in like these pictures from Vicky. I want to have some nice light sources to do that, so I'm going to be investing in some lights. Now, I don't know where I'm going to put them because my studio is pretty small, but I'm going to do the best I can. So here's a little thank you picture that I generated. I took the photograph. This one's called Buzzy Bee. I converted it to a 1440 by 480 Ham 8 image and superimposed the names of all my patrons on it. So here you go, and thank you very much, everyone. So enjoy having fun and being productive on your Amigas. Remember, these are not just game machines, and they never have been just game machines. These are incredibly powerful computers that were years ahead of their time as far as the operating system and what they could do, that just happen to be able to play some of the best games out there. Have fun with your Amigas. Subscribe. Please like the video if you like it. Comment below. Tell me about your adventures with ImageFX. Follow me on Twitter at 10mark1. But until next time, this is Doug from 10 Minute Amiga Retrocast, signing out.